Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So, we have a special guest. We are joined here by Ed Gabriels, who is an old friend of mine who I have been training and racing with for 15 years now. A while. For a while.
Yeah,
For a long time. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
well,
Um, Ed and I used to train together in Brooklyn, and then coached for several years with the New York City chapter of Team in Training. Ed is famously my swim run partner, and somebody who I've gotten to do a lot of fun swimming with. He is has been part of the endurance school community since pretty much day one. Ed was one of our like test audiences way back when we first got started. So we were like, "Hey, is this thing gonna work?" And Ed was like, "Yeah, I think it could." So we owe a lot of our continued success to Ed Gabriel's feedback. Ed lives in the Hudson Valley right now with his wife Steph and their dog Rudy. And he runs Open Sky Training, which is a very cool training facility in the Hudson Valley that we one day hope to partner with him for a super cool swim camp. So look for that any day now when that's a thing again. Ed's history also includes being an accomplished chef and food stylist. So if you want to know anything about how to make food look beautiful, you should definitely ask him about it. I highly encourage you follow him on Instagram. I'll make sure he gives you all his social media stuff. Hi, Amy. Good to see you here. And yeah, so Ed has also been since he started doing triathlon that apparently was not intense enough for him. He's gotten really into ice swimming. So since tonight's focus is going to be on open water swimming, we wanted to make sure to invite somebody who's been doing some of the real heavy lifting in the open water swim world. So ice swimming is, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, anything that is under 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius. Is that right?
that's correct.
Oh my
That's
goodness,
correct.
that's so incredibly cold. If you want to see a picture of Ed, he is on our Instagram right now, swimming in an actual hole in the ice, which is just complete insanity. Ed has participated in the Winter Nationals in 2016, 17, and 18, and in the Winter Swim Festival in Lake Memphremagog. Memphremagog?
That,
In
that's
Lake
a tough one.
Memphrey,
Yeah.
and which is a lake that's in northern Vermont. It's about 6 miles from the Canadian border, and those events happen in February and March, so very chilly times. So Ed, thank you so much for kicking off our open water swim masterclass. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. It's great being here. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get started, we also want to say that we talked a little bit about Blue 70 before we went live, and Blue 70 is sponsoring this production tonight. If you are here and you're listening, you can use the code CBCG, so just the four letters of our company, our parent company's name, CBCG, and you can get 40% off any of their stuff, which is a pretty significant discount.
Tonight only, though,
So
right?
go and for listeners tonight. So go and use that to support yourself in these open water swimming times a little earlier in the year than normal when things are a little bit colder. So Molly, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so it's a little bit earlier in the year for some of us, but this is getting late and warm for folks like Ed. So, Ed, I think the first question that everybody wants to know is, oh my God, why? Why? Why do you do this?
Well, because I can. I don't know.
What drew you to
Yeah.
open water or to ice swimming?
What was that?
What drew you to ice swimming?
Well, what drew me to ice swimming? Well, in the beginning, I had a friend of mine who I was training with. He was actually going to swim the English Channel.
Hmm.
So we started swimming together, and we started swimming together, say, I think it was like September. And we went through September, October, November, all the way through the winters so that he would be acclimated to swim in the English Channel because the channel actually never really gets above 60 degrees. So you need to be really used to that kind of water. So in my in my career, that's how I started off, and then I continued to do it while he went and had twins. So, so he stopped doing it, and I had started, and it was something that I was interested in doing. So I just went ahead and continued year after year, and just swam through the winter, and then swam through swam through the summer again. So
Very cool.
I find that is probably the easiest way to get acclimated to it. But then I found out about all these crazy people who would join me. So
What was the first event that you did? What was your first ice swimming event?
my actual event was was in 2016. I did the U.S. Winter National Championships. So and that was in New York City. It was actually held in the Hudson River at the time, up close to the George Washington Bridge. So they actually had like a boat launch, and they put in lane markers, and we swam out to a buoy, and we swam back in, and that, depending on the distance. So the distances, I did every distance I could, which was from a 25 to a 200. And the water temperature, I think that year was right around 30, 32, 33.
My gosh. So what did you do anything differently to prepare for that first event than you had done than just your normal winter swimming?
Well, when you start off winter swimming, acclimation is a big thing. So for me, I would try at the time I lived in New York City at the time, in Brooklyn, and I would go out to the ocean and swim in Coney Island as much as I could. So if I went every day and I swam for 10 minutes in 40-degree water, then that's what I did. If I swam for 3 minutes in 40-degree water, that's what I did. So I tried to swim as often as I could in the colder temperatures. But when you first start off, you need, gloves and booties and things like that. But by the time I had done the event in 2016, I had been swimming in cold water for about 2 years. So.
Wow. So how do you deal with that first?
So yeah, cold water swimming.
Yeah, it sounds insane. How do you deal with that first moment when you get in the water and it's just like really aggressively cold? Like, what do you do then? What's your process?
So what happens? So for me, when I'm doing it, depends on who you are. Okay, so are you new to the sport, or is it me? So if I'm doing something and it's cold, first thing I do is I actually take the water temperature so I know how cold it is, because I'm crazy like that. And a lot of people don't want to know how cold it is, so they just go in. But I'll go in, I'll take the water temperature, I'll come out, and then I'll go back in. And it's like, I try to, like, I walk in slowly, I put my hands in, I pull my hands out. Once I feel like I'm acclimated at that point, then I'll actually submerge myself. Like either I'll like just sit down in the water, or I'll dive in. So, and it's an eye opener, because your extremities feel it the most, and then your face definitely is not used to cold water. So.
No, my face is not used to cold water.
No, not cold water.
No.
Okay.
So you'd already been swimming in cold water for a few years before you did your first real event. So you had some experience going into it. What surprised you about, like, what challenged your expectations at the event? What is something that you hadn't prepared for, or was different than you had expected, or something like that?
I think the things that caught me off guard would be feeling pins and needles in the water. So the water is so cold that when you dive in, so at an event such as the U.S. Nationals or any other event, basically walk you walk in either waist up, or there's a ladder that takes you to a platform, but you're like waist up, and then they say, "Are you ready?" And they say, "Go," or they shoot a gun, and then you have to dive in.
Oh my God.
So diving in into 30-degree water, the first time it's like, oh, this is great, but what are these pins and needles doing? You know, so it's really shocking to your system. So,
When
but
I
it's
have
also
a
adrenaline, and we all know about adrenaline.
I have a quick format question to tag on to that. These aren't mass start races, right? Like it's like a swim meet. They have they're like, I've seen the lanes cut in the ice, but what the event in the Hudson, how did it, just describe the race format?
So the race format, it's a 2-lane swimming pool.
Okay.
So in the Hudson, obviously the water actually never freezes in the Hudson. You see ice chunks and things like, but where the event was, they had lane markers. It's a 2-lane pool, 25 meters long. So you swim out 25 meters and back 25, or if you're doing a 25, you know, you go out, you climb in, and you swim back into the shoreline. So
That's amazing.
in most of the events that I've done, 200 meters is the furthest I've swam. But in like the Worlds, they swim 1,000 meters. So yeah.
Any aspirations
So 1 kilometer.
Any aspirations to do a 1 kilometer ice swim?
I've actually done it. So I get an ice kilometer out in Coney Island. I actually Boston was.
We lost you for a second as you were telling us about your cool thing. So you said you did a 1 kilometer in Coney Island?
I did. So I've swam right at 41 degrees.
Oh my God.
1 kilometer.
Oh my God.
So I was in the water for 18 minutes.
That's
at 41 degrees. And that was long enough.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds too long.
There's also ice miles.
Oof.
So people swim ice miles as well. And I don't have any aspiration to swim an ice mile at this point.
Not at this point in your career.
What does your body?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
what does your body and brain go through during that 18 minutes in 41-degree water?
Well, let's see. So you get in, you start swimming as hard as you can, so you try to stay warm. And you warm up eventually, but what happens as you're in the water longer and longer, your mobility changes. So your stroke starts to get slower, your extremities, you start to feel it in your hands and your feet. Everything's at the surface in your feet and your hands, like your toes. So those are the things you really need to watch out for, whether you're doing an ice swim or you're new to cold water swimming, which a lot of athletes currently are because all the pools are closed. So things you need to watch out for are your extremities. So what happens is your mobility, you gradually get slower and slower and slower. So you want to try to, during the kilometer, I really wanted to get done as quickly as possible. So in the beginning, I swam harder and harder, but I get slower and slower as I went on. Then as time goes on, you get to learn when you should get out. So what are your limitations on being in cold water? So, a lot of people now have to try to swim in colder water than they're used to. You should be doing while you're in water. And I wouldn't, and if you're not used to it, I wouldn't go in without booties and gloves. And Blue 70 makes a thermal cap as well. The other thing is if your water temperatures are under 55, or I would even say 58 degrees, you might want to wear earplugs as well. Because when you wear earplugs, it actually keeps the cold water out of your head. So that's the other thing. It's kind of like a game you're playing with yourself. So it is really cold, but you don't want to really feel it. So earplugs really help with that. So you put earplugs in, put a thermal cap on, put gloves and booties on. When you're not used to it, you need to have all that kind of stuff. In my case, I started off that way 9 years ago, but now I have no gloves, no booties for any temperature that I do.
No wetsuit?
No wetsuit.
Ah. So do you have any other advice for folks who would be interested in ice swimming or swimming in cold water? Any advice for noobs?
Advice, like if you're just starting off, is that what you're talking about,
Yeah.
Molly? Yeah, so, when you're first starting off as a cold water swimmer, I think that the best thing is to learn about your limitations. Learn about, how long can I stay in the water, but I don't want to lose the feeling in my hands and feet. Nobody does. But that's what happens is it actually, because of your extremities, your nerve endings in your feet, in your hands, that's what numbness is caused from, is the deadening of the nerve. So it grows back eventually, but so when you want to start off, I would say go in for 5 minutes, come back out, go in for a couple more minutes, come back out. A lot of people believe in cold. One thing to remember is most tap water, whether it's city or like in my case, it comes from a well. My well doesn't get any colder than 50 degrees.
Really?
So for me, yeah. So ice baths. I know people that sit in ice tubs when they don't have access to a lake or to a body of water that's colder than, 30, 40 degrees. They'll just sit in a tub of ice. Oh, so these are ways to act. Yes, you, Molly. That's you.
I am not the target audience. I am a wussy swimmer.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to know anything about ice swimming or how to get in it, I think that if you're interested in, say, getting used to cold water, now's your time to start swimming that way. So you start off slowly. When summer will come, the water will be warmer. You actually have to follow the curve back down, and you have to follow it into the winter months. So that's when you start to acclimate.
Incrementally.
Like the more you do it, the better you become at it. Just like heat acclimation. We all train for heat races as well. Yeah. So the more we train with the heat, the better we become with our races as well. So the same concept, I think, applies to that. The more you do it, the better the more you get used to it. So.
Tell us a little bit about the ice swimming community. Like who is drawn to this sport in your experience?
You'll hold out for 1 second?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks. I'll just disappear for a minute.
Totally.
Sorry.
We'll use this break in the broadcast to remind everybody that Blue 70 is offering a 40% discount to all of our watchers tonight. Just use the code on my chest.
CBCG.
CBCG.
Oh, Ed's fixing his lighting.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He was kind of sitting in the dark there. I think the sun is going down on the East Coast right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sun went down in the east.
We can see you much better now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the sun went down over the tree line over there. So
You were getting very like Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. We're talking about cold
Oh.
water and the darkness is descending. I was like, this is how my heart feels whenever I get into
the
the
swimming
water.
pool behind me, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was asking who, like, describe the the ice swimming community to us. Like, who ends up in this sport?
Who ends up in the sport? Bunch of crazy people, just like triathlons. Um, it's an interesting community. So there's an ice swimming. There's the International Ice Swimming Association. They're the IISA. They're the ones that oversee a lot of the European races and the World Championships. And they've actually been to Vermont with us as well when we've done that event. But it's actually the gentleman that oversees that is actually from South Africa. And it's actually a worldwide sport.
Huh.
So I know that sounds weird.
But it's real.
Actually have swimming pools in different countries specifically for winter swimming.
Wow.
Russia, Germany, Poland, Slovenia.
Cold countries.
Cold countries, but warm too. But the people that end up, it's a vast majority of people. I mean, look at me. I'm in the sport. I'm a food stylist. Who knew? I have another really good friend of mine. Her name is Jamie Monahan. She works in the financial world in the city, and she actually goes to Antarctica every year and swims an ice mile in Antarctica.
Wow.
I have videos of her swimming with penguins.
That's crazy.
So you have the icebergs, and you have her swimming in the middle of that. But it could be your everyday person. I mean, in New York City, there's a group called SIBOs. It's the Coney Island Brighton Beach Open Water Swimming Group.
Yep.
They swim year-round as well. The polar bears. So, I mean, it's pretty much anyone. I mean, it's Molly. She only had the motor, but I don't think Chris could do it though. He's not,
Chris
doesn't have
is
the
more
right
likely
mind.
than
Molly,
I
on the other
am, for
hand,
sure. I think he's challenging you, Chris.
But,
He's looking for an open water swim buddy. What's your next event?
At this point, there's nothing on the event calendar.
Are you done, or are you just waiting for something else?
Just waiting for something else.
Great.
I took this year off of my winter swimming because I had a lot of things coming up. Some other trips planned. We went to Paris right before the pandemic hit. I got back from Paris on the 9th of March. And then the United States closed down a day later.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I didn't do the winter swimming event this year. Probably next year again. I had a couple other trips planned, some half Ironman because I do that thing still, but those are all canceled. So at this point, I'm swimming again. There's a lake just a couple of miles away from me, and I've been swimming there for I think it's been probably 6 weeks now.
Wow.
And when I started there 6 weeks ago, the water was 47 degrees, and now it's 62.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's up 15
That's
degrees.
so much better.
Oh, yeah.
So much better. So 49 degrees, I'm swimming for like 10 to 15 minutes. 62 degrees, I'm swimming for 2 hours.
That's great.
And this is all non-wetsuit.
That's
So you've hung up the wetsuit.
Except for triathlons.
Nice.
That's
Except
the only
for
way
triathlons.
get to
It's
wear
a
that,
speed
or
advantage.
swim run when I get to hang out with Molly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the cold water swimming, it's invigorating. It's definitely a challenge. I mean, you know, it's just like, I mean, it's just like training for anything. You know, there's always its challenges. So um, this is cold water. This is motivation to be in cold water. But if you have to look at the end result, if you're going to be in the water for anywhere from 30 seconds to 20 minutes, you're going to have to acclimate your body just like in a race. You know? In the winter time when it freezes here and the lake freezes over, I go to the river. There's a small little stream about a quarter of a mile from my house, but it gets down to 30 degrees, so I get in there and squat down in the water and hang out. But that's, you know, the water acclimation. You got to get it in any way you can.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing a good job too. You know, with your programs, it's doing really well. So.
Getting out in the water.
Well, Ed, those are all the questions that we had lined up for you.
Okay.
I won't even throw in my my question about your like or dislike of swim paddles. That's for probably another time. But I think it looks like Molly had one more question.
We do have one question from chat.
Oh, nice. Right on.
That I thought was really good. So I know you said that towards the end of a longer open water swim that your form starts to degrade and you slow down. But for something like a 50 or 100, like in these ice nationals, are times typically slower than warm water swimming, or are they about the same? Are they faster because people are just trying to get out of there?
Actually, no. It's kind of crazy.
How so?
There's people that are incredibly fast. I think, you know, they're young, me, but also they're faster swimmers. So,
Okay.
you know, unfortunately, I'm not as fast as I was 40 years ago, but you know, there's people that have just got out of college, or there's people that are in college as college swimmers, and they're there racing. I mean, there's a guy that did at the Worlds, I think this year, did the 1,000 in 12 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
That's fast.
so he's swimming at an incredible rate. I swim the 200, and there's a guy that swims the 200 with me in 2:15, which
It's great.
Yes. Swimming in 30-degree water. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's, you know, there's still really fast people out there when it comes to, you know, winter swimming. This times seem to be a little bit slower than, say, people we like to watch, like the Olympians and college people. But, you know, there's people out there still swimming 2-minute 200s in 30-degree water. So
It's amazing.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely in keeping with we're trying to find places outside the mainstream of triathlon to like talk to people in here so that people can learn more about different sports and things like that. And yeah, we really look forward to coming and running some camps up at Open Sky.
Can't wait
to do that.
One day soon.
that'll be great. Chris and Molly, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on.
It. I am, yeah, no problem. Can't wait to see you guys here.
Yeah, we'll see you again in Spin soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for continuing to come to the sessions. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
My pleasure, guys. You guys keep me motivated and keep me going, because right now motivation is really hard.
Yeah,
so,
we hear you. That's what a lot of us are struggling with. Thank you.
Your program's doing wonders for me. Thanks again. All
Thank
right, guys.
you,
Have a
Ed.
good night.
Thanks for the
Ed.
cookies. Bye.
Talk soon. See ya.
Awesome.
All right, guys, sit tight. We still have some things to talk about, so we're gonna do some. Oh wow, you already made that happen. That's amazing.
I know.
Oh.
But now I need to resize your head.
I know.
Sorry,
No,
everyone.
that's fine.
Hang
That's
on.
fine. Just right there is
No, it's
totally
just
okay.
perfect. It's just perfect.
Yeah, just
I forgot that once Ed signed off, we would have a slightly different setup over here in Zoom. So don't worry, everyone. Chris is
yeah.
going to be totally visible again soon. There
um,
you are.
oh yeah, look at that. Much better. There's my usual talking head.
Behind the scenes at the endurance school.
When we say behind the scenes, we mean in front of the scenes.
In front of the scenes, right.
All right, guys, we got about a little more than 10 minutes left of the show tonight, and Molly and I are just going to talk a little bit about the fact, obviously, most of us don't have pools, so some things that we keep in mind when we're doing open water swimming, and some ways to make it a little different, make it a little bit more fun, make it a little more safe, all of that stuff. Molly, I think the first thing, that we always got to remember, right, is that open water swimming takes long.
Yes, absolutely. An already time-consuming sport becomes even more time-consuming with the addition of like changing clothes and getting sand off of you and all of that kind of stuff. How much longer does it take, Chris?
I mean, so normally you'd think if you're going to a pool, right, like about twice as long as you think the workout is going to take is a good rule of thumb. So you have a 60-minute swim, you're probably looking at like 2 hours of time investment. That is, if like your pool is relatively close to where you live, there's not crazy traffic, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
We found that if you're going to open water swimming, that it's as much as like 2.5 to 3 times as long. So, like a 45-minute swim, Amy and I have been swimming in a lake that's pretty close, like probably a 20-minute drive from here. But total round trip time for a 45-minute swim is, we have to be moving really quickly to be back home in like 2.25 hours. So anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times as long. Obviously as like the swim gets longer and longer, it really isn't going to multiply out, but
exponentially.
Yeah, that's just a good rule of thumb. So just remember that and plan for the fact that it's going to that your swim session is going to take you longer than a normal swim session would.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think the other thing that's really important to keep in mind with swim is that I think in all aspects of our sport, there are some inferred risks that we know that we're taking on simply by participating. But I think that with swim, it is a little bit different because the environment isn't forgiving if something does go wrong. So it's the reason why there are lifeguards in the pool. And I think that extrapolating that to your open water swim is a really good idea to make sure that you stay visible while you're swimming and make sure that you don't swim alone. I think, there are people who make concessions for, their own training. And I think that, I'm not going to argue with people about that, but my recommendation is always to swim when there's someone else around you and someone who can see you and preferably somebody on shore. So I think that is how I prefer to swim. I do not swim alone. I am scared of the dark and scary waters. So I definitely recommend having something that will keep you visible. And as Ed just suggested, the swim buoys are phenomenal, especially if you're swimming in urban locations, which a lot of us are right now. They're just not they're not secure necessarily. You may leave your stuff on shore, and the swim buoys are great to drop your car keys in or to put like a rolled up $20 bill in. They also float and are super visible, and they make it a lot easier for you to be seen by the people who are with you, and to be seen by the people around anyway. They make you safer from boats. All of those things. I think that every open water location has its own kind of like inherent risks, and it's just good to be familiar with what exists there. We definitely have some like blue-green algae issues up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's good to stay on top of that. Chris, you have had some luck trying to figure out what the current situation is, haven't you? How have you monitored those locations?
The Clark County website has a really, really good, a very well up-to-date record of the blue-green algae situation in Vancouver Lake. So they have records of when the previous year closed, and then they have pretty much weekly recommendations of whether it's safe to swim in certain locations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go to the Clark County website, if you are going to go swim in Vancouver Lake, note to everybody, Vancouver, Washington.
That's right, not British Columbia.
You're not going to find a Clark County in and around Vancouver, BC. Um, yeah, that's a great resource, and a lot of your local county websites will have information about parks and the bodies of water that those parks sit on. So if you are swimming at a lake that does have a park attached to it, just go and check out the website for that particular park. You'll probably find some information about water quality and water safety there.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that Molly brought up is like when you get to a new place, don't just run straight in. Like there's stuff that you might not see in the water. Vancouver Lake has actually a really big drop off when you
Mm-hmm.
enter. You walk about 25 yards out, and you're about hip deep, and then it suddenly goes to over your head. And one of the things that you really want to do when you're in cold open water swim settings is make sure that you get your face wet before you start. And so just plunging in unexpectedly is not a good plan in that regard. So explore,
Mm-hmm.
walk out, feel forward with your feet, see what you can experience down there, because cold water, if you're not used to it, as we just heard, can be alarming. But Molly, what are some techniques that people can do to just kind of get their system ready for an open water swim session that might be a little bit colder?
So there are a couple things that I wanted to bring up before getting into like what you can do specifically to get ready for a colder open water swim. And the first one is always to try to get as much information about a location before you swim in it. To talk to the people who have been swimming there already, to look at websites. There are usually people who talk about this. The Oregon Wild web or Facebook group has some great information there. There are always open water Facebook groups for locations, and people have a lot that they're willing to share there. Remember, these are habitats, so there are typically like things that live there, and they're not usually dangerous things. Sometimes they are though, so like don't go open water swimming in Florida if there's a sign that says beware of the alligators. Like take that really seriously. Probably don't worry too much about sharks unless you're living in Australia, and then be very, very concerned about sharks. As my little brother just said, the inferi are probably not something to be super worried about. They are ghosts, and they are what I'm mostly scared about in the open water. But that's because of the sensory deprivation environment that lets your imagination run wild. And I think that is the thing to be the most prepared for when you get into an open water swim environment, is that your brain is probably it's not your best friend for sure. Especially if you're newer to open water swimming. It's easy for your brain to kind of spiral out and think about all of the things that you can't see or can't control. So I would expect to have some amount of fear when you get into open water, but also expect for that fear to diminish. So I think that almost everyone has a pretty nervous first swim in open water. If you get back in the next day or even later on that day, you'll probably notice that it gets a whole lot better. The reality is there's not that much interesting in the water that you're swimming in, and that there are probably signs up and tourists looking for them if there are interesting things there. It's a very important thing to be aware of, but also not one to get super concerned with and let your imagination spiral. Another thing that I think people do too often is to run in and kind of like start off swimming really quickly. What that does is it causes your heart rate and your respiratory rate to escalate, which can sometimes trick your brain into thinking that you're panicking or that you should panic. Try to ease into the water, splash water on your hands, on your arms, on your face, on your chest, anywhere that wouldn't necessarily be expecting it, and just give yourself a minute to start swimming easy before you try to do any effort. Yeah, I think it's good if you're going to be practicing any runs in or like open water starts, to practice those a few times and to practice those pretty slowly too. Those are all things that can really escalate your heart rate pretty quickly. But generally, the best thing about open water swimming is that it's awesome and fun and adventure. And like, I think people think about it as like a very serious workout, but it really is hanging out at the beach with your friends. So like you get to go and have like a lovely day in the water. And I think that is the best way to look at open water swimming. There are certainly inherent risks, but what a fun thing to do and what a great way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah.
Anything I left out there, Chris?
No, in terms of the safety stuff, I think that just about hits it. Laura, I just replied to your question in chat, so I dropped in that website for Vancouver Lake, the Clark County lakes and parks. So that should help clear that up for you.
They do monitor that pretty often, also.
Yeah, it changes. Yeah, they seem to be super on, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, going off of what Molly said about having fun, this is also a real opportunity. Like we tend to get like so pool focused. I am definitely guilty of this. I love the pool. I love swimming in the pool. It's neat. It's orderly. It's measurable. It is all the things that really like makes the type A endurance athlete in me very happy. And the open water, like I tend to neglect it because I don't like it as much. But our sport takes place in the open water.
Mm-hmm.
So here's your chance to practice aspects of your swimming that you usually neglect, like swimming quickly while you're still sighting, like really learning to incorporate that into your swimming. I, like a lot of athletes, sort of pay it lip service and do a little bit of work on it every year, but here's a real chance to like practice it every time. And be good at sighting from either side of your stroke. So if you're usually you like sight forward and then breathe to your right, or if you breathe to your right and then sight forward, practice doing it on the other side. I am like a chronic right-sided unilateral breather when I'm going hard. So when I've been going out to the lake, been really, really trying to incorporate a lot of left-sided breathing, bilateral breathing, really trying to break the habit of only being unilateral when I'm swimming hard, so that when it is time to get back in the pool, so when it is time to race, I know that I'll be super comfortable breathing to both sides. And that's what the open water affords us. Like you can't focus as much on like the workout because it's harder to measure things. So it is a great time to focus on like the skills and the specific setting of where we compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What else do we have here? I think the type of workouts that you do while you're swimming in open water, it's really hard to translate that for people who are pool based. Who think like open water swimming is more just about the acclimation of like the strangeness of the environment. You can still get a really good workout in open water, but I think it's better for athletes to think about it in terms of how long they're staying in, only as a function of like, how much distance they cover. So instead of thinking about like, swimming 100 hard and 100 easy, break it up into something where you don't have to like stare at your watch the whole time. About our feelings about reliance on technology in the water, and that definitely carries over into open water as well. So like, at Vancouver Lake, they have a big area of pilings. I like to swim around the pilings. I'll swim once around the pilings and take a little break, and then once around the pilings, take a little break. It's about 350, I think, around, maybe 400. Somewhere in there. It doesn't really matter. It takes you more than 2 minutes and less than 10 ish to cover that distance, depending on whether you're swimming the whole thing at one clip. So it's a good distance to think about, and to think about how long you want to stay in the water and how many loops of those pilings that you would want to do. Another thing that Chris is really fond of is counting your strokes. So like, swim 100 strokes and then swim 20 strokes hard, or swim 100 strokes hard and take another 100 easy. Count and have that workout happen in your head instead of happening on your watch, or happening, as you think about the distance between point to point. It's a really, really helpful race tactic too, to be able to take your head out of the race and how much you have left. So try to learn how to count, to quiet your brain, and come to morning routine. Work on meditation. That definitely carries over into open water. If you can quiet the stuff that's acting up in open water swimming, from sensory deprivation or how long have I been in here or any of that stuff, like, you are definitely going to come out ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you're talking about with like swimming around the pilings. Like that's sort of like one of the workouts that I dropped in here. Because like if you think about it, like whatever, more than 2 and less than 10 minutes, like if you guys think about all of the workouts we do, like most of the intervals that we do, whether it's swimming, cycling, or running, are like between 2 minutes and 10 minutes. That's like where the vast bulk of them fall. So instead of worrying about, is it 300 meters, is it 375 meters, like this has to be perfect for my Strava account.
Right.
Like what Molly's saying about like just do a number of repetitions. And so maybe you like start hard, swim across moderate, swim back in hard, or do something else. Start easy, swim across hard, swim back in easy. You know, I mean, like have fun with it. Like it's the sport that like most clearly resembles going to the beach when you were a kid. And like here's a chance to like race your friends to that next pile lane and just stop and laugh about it and have some fun.
I do not want to race you to the next piling, for the record. I know how that race turns out.
Well, I think what it ends up happening is we each pick a different piling.
Right. My piling is a lot closer.
Like it ends up in the like, this was the finish line. This was the finish line.
The finish line.
Yeah.
I tried to draft off of Chris when we were in Kona, open water swimming, which is still really fun. I'm much better at open water swimming on my own for in clear water, I have found. But yeah, it was trying to draft off of Chris for me is very similar to swimming on my own. It's feet and then nothing.
Does anybody out there have any questions or anything that they want to throw in chat that we haven't answered yet? In talking about ice swimming, we won't be able to answer that, but Ed is still here in chat, or open water stuff. While we wait for any of those to show back up, we're still taking entries for virtual camp. We're going to keep that open until I think Thursday
at midnight, probably.
Yeah, probably Thursday at midnight is when we'll keep taking entries to virtual camp. So if you're interested in coming to virtual camp, we would love to have you. In other endurance school news, you are in Molly's hands tomorrow morning for morning routine. So come on in and do some strength that you never do, some meditation, and some journaling. You'll be with me for a swim fit session tomorrow night. And I don't know, maybe we'll try to incorporate some of the stuff that we're talking about tonight. That'll be my challenge for the next 24 hours.
Everyone fill up their bathtubs with ice water, and you guys can jump into the bathtub full of ice water and then get out and do stretch cords.
Something I'm very happy about is that Molly has Sufferfest on Thursday morning. I am not going to be joining you guys along for Sufferfest on Thursday because my legs are blown for at least a week. So that's a good question, Edith. Tether swimming transition to open water swimming. What should we be doing? Molly, the first thing that jumps out to my mind here is like talking about body position. Is that because that is harder with the tether.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of my folks swimming with pull buoys with the tether just to keep them swimming for longer because their feet are sinking down to the bottom. But yes, I think body position is definitely the key for tether swimming. It's also just a lot of resistance. I think you fatigue really quickly when you're tethered to something.
Yeah. So on that, hopefully the muscles that are getting tired from your tether swimming are like these muscles back here, your lats, and some of your triceps. And hopefully you're only getting like sort of tertiary fatigue in your shoulders. there's no way to swim without some shoulder fatigue. But like when Molly and I see a swimmer get out of the pool and they're doing this, it's a bad sign.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that when you're doing your tether swimming, that fatigue is ending up in your lats and your triceps. And then when you get out into open water, like Molly said, you're transitioning from a lot of resistance to less resistance. And that can be a recipe for sort of like for windmilling, which isn't bad. Like high stroke rate, never a bad thing. But if you're windmilling with a straight arm and pushing down at the front of your stroke, you're gonna light up
Mm-hmm.
that shoulder joint. So try to make the same part of your back fatigued that was getting fatigued while you were swimming with the tether.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be one of my suggestions.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing for folks to think about as they're getting into open water, I hear a lot of people talking about discomfort with a wetsuit and feeling like their wetsuit is restrictive. A lot of times that is because of improper wetsuit donning. It's something that needs to be pulled all the way up. You need to pull up your wetsuit until you can't pull it up anymore. Like the fit up, like from the legs up, is what determines the fit on the top part of your body. So legs need to be flush to your crotch, and then you've got to have the arms flush to your armpits. It's not a glamorous thing to talk about on the internet, but it is so true. If you're feeling like there's resistance as you open up your arm stroke, if you're feeling like your shoulders are fatiguing quickly, if you're feeling like your wetsuit is pulling at the neck, a lot of times that is because your wetsuit is not on properly. So yank up your wetsuit on the legs. Make sure you yank it up on your arms. If you have somebody behind you who can kind of shake you, that's a great way to shake somebody into a wetsuit. So make sure you take some time with wetsuit positioning. I also recommend going in and letting a little bit of water into your suit. They're not dry suits. They're not meant to be dry. So let the wetsuit get wet and do its job. That's how it warms up. And yeah, I think the wetsuits are great.
How high should the cuffs be on your calves? Like where do the cuffs of the wetsuit usually end up on your calves once you pull them up to the correct height?
So that's not totally fair, Chris, because a lot of us are not as tall as others might be. So, for example, some wetsuits may go up pretty high. I look for a wetsuit fit that's going to fit you right around the calf, where
Yeah.
it's not going to be like on the top of your calf muscle.
Yeah.
It's going to come down below the calf muscle. But some of us shorter folk may have a slightly longer fit in the legs. So yeah, wetsuits are they're made to fit a lot of different types of bodies in the same cut. So so very tall people, very short people, they're taking their best guess at what's going to fit most people. So so find a brand that works for you. I have always swam in Blue 70. I love them. They make a really solid wetsuit, and not just because they're giving us 40% off tonight. I have been swimming in the Reaction, which is not the top of the line. Helix is a great wetsuit, but the Reaction's the one that's been kind of in my affordability, and it's awesome. It's a great suit. They've got different panels underneath the arms, which is another thing I think that's worth the investment. Wetsuits are things that, like, the more you pay for them, the more comfortable they're going to be in general. The ones that are the more like entry level wetsuits tend to be one piece of neoprene or many pieces of neoprene sewn together. The rubbery kind of plasticized parts, they don't have as much give as the ones that have the stretchier panels up the side. So that is what I would look for in a wetsuit. You don't have to get the top of the line. The top of the line is going to be faster. It's going to be more comfortable, but the middle of the line tends to be really good as well. But I would also stay away from the very entry level ones. I think they tend to be the most restrictive. And you want to be free in your movement.
Well, I think that is all the questions that we had in there. Thank you guys so much for joining us on another one of our master classes. We really appreciate it. Big thanks to Ed. That's RMG Hudson Valley for all of you that are in the chat. That's Ed. So he not only came on the show, but now is hanging out in chat. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun. It's been great catching up with Ed. It's always fun to talk about open water swimming, which is one of my favorite things to do. Even as much as I talk about being a scared wuss about the cold, dark water, I do really love it. It feels so much like adventure and like orienteering and finding your way. And I think it's really rare to find a sport that is challenging physically and also challenges you to like be brave and go out and like do something fun. And I love it. It's been an awesome thing for me to participate in. I hope you guys have fun with it as well. And yeah, thank you for coming. Sign up for virtual camp. It's open to everybody and we're really excited about it. We have a lot of cool stuff happening and we've got some cool swag that's getting put together. Yeah, awesome. So I will see you tomorrow morning, and Thursday morning for morning routine and Sufferfest while Chris is napping, hopefully, blissfully. Yeah, thank you again. This is always so much fun for us. And Chris, you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks for coming, guys. And here's to a happier and faster tomorrow.
Bye, guys.